The Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Lyon, Latin, Archidioecesis Lugdunensis, French, Archdiocese de Lyon, formerly the Archdiocese of Lyon Vienne Embrun, is a Roman Catholic Metropolitan Archdiocese in France. The title of Archbishop is currently vacant. The Archbishops of Lyon serve as successors to Saint Pothinus and Saint Irenaeus, the first and second bishops of Lyon, respectively, and are also called Primate of the Gauls. It is one of the more prestigious archbishoprics within the French Church, and its holder is usually promptly elevated to being a cardinal. Currently, the archdiocese is run by apostolic administrator Michel Dubost. The deacon of Vienne, who was martyred at Lyon during the persecution of 177, was probably a deacon installed at Vienne by the ecclesiastical authority of Lyon. The confluence of the Rhone and the Saône, where 60 Gallic tribes had erected the famous altar to Roman Augustus, was also the center from which Christianity was gradually propagated throughout Gaul. The presence at Lyon of numerous Asiatic Christians and their almost daily communications with the Orient were likely to arouse the susceptibilities of the Gallo-Romans. A persecution arose under Marcus Aurelius. Its victims at Lyon numbered 48, half of them of Greek origin, half Gallo-Roman, among others Saint Blandina, and Saint Pothinus, first bishop of Lyon, sent to Gaul by Saint Polycarp about the middle of the 2nd century. The legend according to which he was sent by Saint Clement dates from the 12th century and is without foundation. The letter addressed to the Christians of Asia and Phrygia in the name of the faithful of Vienne and Lyon, and relating the persecution of 177, is considered by Ernest Renan as one of the most extraordinary documents possessed by any literature. It is the baptismal certificate of Christianity in France. The successor of Saint Pothinus was the illustrious Saint Irenaeus, 177–202. The discovery on the hill of Saint Sebastian of ruins of a Naumachia capable of being transformed into an amphitheater, and of some fragments of inscriptions apparently belonging to an altar of Augustus, has led several archaeologists to believe that the martyrs of Lyon suffered death on this hill. Very ancient tradition, however, represents the church of Aeneas erected at the place of their martyrdom. The crypt of Saint Pothinus, under the choir of the church of Saint Nizier, was destroyed in 1884. But there are still revered at Lyon the prison cell of Saint Pothinus, where Anne of Austria, Louis XIV, and Pius VII came to pray, and the crypt of Saint Irenaeus built at the end of the 5th century by Saint Patience, which contains the body of Saint Irenaeus. There are numerous funerary inscriptions of primitive Christianity in Lyon, the earliest dates from the year 334. In the 2nd and 3rd centuries, the See of Lyon enjoyed great renown throughout Gaul. Witness the local legends of Byzantium and of several other cities relative to the missionaries sent out by Saint Irenaeus. Faustinus, bishop in the second half of the 3rd century, wrote to Saint Cyprian and Pope Stephenite, in 254, regarding the novitiate and tendencies of Marcian, bishop of Arles. But when Diocletian's new provincial organization, Tetrarchy, had taken away from Lyon its position as metropolis of the three Gauls, the prestige of Lyon diminished for a time. At the end of the empire and during the Merovingian period, several saints, as follows, are counted among the bishops of Lyon. Saint Justus, 374–381, who died in a monastery in the Thebaid, Egypt, and was renowned for the orthodoxy of his doctrine in the struggle against Arianism. The Church of the Maccabees, whither his body was brought, was as early as the 5th century a place of pilgrimage under the name of the Collegiate Church of Saint Justus. Saint Alpinus and Saint Martin, disciple of Saint Martin of Tours, end of 4th century, Saint Antiochus, 400–410, Saint Elpidius, 410–422, Saint Zacharias, 422–33, Saint Eucherius, c. 433–50, the monk of Lorraine and the author of homilies, from whom doubtless dates the foundation at Lyon of the Hermitages, of which more will be said below, Saint Patience, 456–98, who successfully combated the famine in Arianism, and whom Sidonius Apollinaris praised in a poem, Saint Lupiccinus, 491–94, Saint Rusticus, 494–501, Saint Stephanus, d. before 515, who with Saint Avitus of Vienne convoked a council at Lyon for the conversion of the Arians, Saint Viventilus, 515–523, who in 517 presided with Saint Avitus at the Council of Epiphone, Saint Lupus, a monk, afterwards bishop, 535–42, probably the first archbishop, who when signing in 438 the Council of Orleans added the title of Metropolitanus, Saint Sardot or Sacerdos, 549–542, who presided in 549 at the Council of Orleans, and who obtained from King Chaldebert the foundation of the General Hospital, Saint Nicetius or Nicaea, 552-73, who received from the Pope the title of Patriarch, and whose tomb was honored by miracles. The prestige of Saint Nicetius was lasting. His successor Saint Prisius, 573-588, bore the title of Patriarch, and brought the Council of 585 to decide that national synods should be convened every 3 years at the instance of the Patriarch and of the King. Saint Aetherius, 588-603, who was a correspondent of Saint Gregory the Great and who perhaps consecrated Saint Augustine, the Apostle of England. Saint Irenaeus, 603-615, Saint Anamundus or Chaimond, c. 650, friend of Saint Wilfrid, godfather of Clotaire III, put to death by Embrun together with his brother, and patron of the town of Saint Chaimond, lawyer, Saint Genesius or Genes, 660-679 or 680, Benedictine abbot of Fontenelle, Grand Almoner, and minister of Queen Bathilde. Saint Lambertus, c. 680-690, also abbot of Fontenelle. At the end of the 5th century, Lyon was the capital of the Kingdom of Burgundy, but after 534 it passed under the domination of the kings of France. Ravaged by the Saracens in 725, the city was restored through the liberality of Charlemagne, who established a rich library in the monastery of Isle-Bark. In the time of Saint Patience and the priest Constans, d. 488, the school of Lyon was famous. Sidonius Apollinaris was educated there. The letter of Lygrade to Charlemagne, 807, shows the care taken by the emperor for the restoration of learning in Lyon. With the aid of the deacon Florus, he made the school so prosperous that in the 10th century Englishmen went there to study. Under Charlemagne and his immediate successors, the bishops of Lyon, whose ascendancy was attested by the number of councils over which they were called to preside, played an important theological part. Adoptionism had no more active enemies than Lygrade, 798-814, and Agobard, 814-840. When Felix of Urgel continued rebellious to the condemnations pronounced against adoptionism from 791 to 799 by the councils of Cittad, Friuli, Ratisbon, Frankfurt, and Rome, Charlemagne conceived the idea of sending to Urgel with Nebritius, Bishop of Narbonne, Benedict of Anian, and Archbishop Lygrade, a native of Nuremberg and Charlemagne's librarian. They preached against adoptionism in Spain, conducted Felix in 799 to the Council of Aachen, where he seemed to submit to the arguments of Alcuin, and then brought him back to his diocese. But the submission of Felix was not complete. Agobard, chorepiscopus of Lyon, convicted him anew of adoptionism in a secret conference, and when Felix died in 815 there was found among his papers a treatise in which he professed adoptionism. Then Agobard, who had become Archbishop of Lyon in 814 after Lygrade's retirement to the Abbey of Saint Médard, Soissons, composed a long treatise against that heresy. Agobard displayed great activity as a pastor and a publicist in his opposition to the Jews and to various superstitions. His rooted hatred for all superstition led him in his treatise on images into certain expressions which savored of iconoclasm. The 5 historical treatises which he wrote in 833 to justify the deposition of Louis the Pious, who had been his benefactor, are a stain on his life. Louis the Pious, having been restored to power, caused Agobard to be deposed in 835 by the Council of Thionville, but 3 years later gave him back his see, in which he died in 840. During the exile of Agobard, the see of Lyon had been for a short time administered by Amalarius of Metz, whom the deacon Flores charged with heretical opinions regarding the triform Corpus Christi, and who took part in the controversies with Gottschalk on the subject of predestination. Amolan, 841-852, and Saint Remy, 852-75, continued the struggle against the heresy of Valence, which condemned this heresy, and also was engaged in strife with Hincmar. From 879-1032 Lyon formed part of the Kingdom of Provence and afterwards of the Second Kingdom of Burgundy. In 1032 Rudolf III of Burgundy died and his kingdom eventually went to Conrad II. The portion of Lyon situated on the left bank of the Saône became, at least nominally, an imperial city. Finally Archbishop Burchard II, brother of Rudolf, claimed rights of sovereignty over Lyon as inherited from his mother, Matilda, daughter of Louis IV of France. In this way the government of Lyon, instead of being exercised by the distant emperor, became a matter of dispute between the counts who claimed the inheritance and the successive archbishops. Lyon attracted the attention of Cardinal Hildebrand, who held a council there in 1055 against the Simoniacal bishops. In 1076, as Gregory VII, he deposed Archbishop Humbert, 1063-76, for simony. Saint Jedwin, Jubinus, who succeeded Humbert, was the confidant of Gregory VII and contributed to the reform of the Church by the two councils of 1080 and 1082, at which were excommunicated Manasses of Rheims, Fulk of Anjou, and the monks of Marmoutiers. It was under the episcopate of Saint Jedwin that Gregory VII, April 20, 1079, established the primacy of the Church of Lyon over the provinces of Rouen, Tours, and Sens, which primacy was specially confirmed by Callistus II, despite the letter written to him in 1126 by Louis VI in favor of the Church of Senators as far as it regarded the province of Rouen. This letter was later suppressed by a decree of the King's Council in 1702, at the request of Jacques-Nicolas Colbert, Archbishop of Rouen. Hugh of died, 1081-1106, the successor of Saint Jedwin, friend of Saint Anselm, and for a while legate of Gregory VII in France and Burgundy, had differences later on with Victor III, who excommunicated him for a time. The latter pope came to Lyon in 1106, consecrated the church of Agny Abbey, and dedicated one of its altars in honor of the Immaculate Conception. The Feast of the Immaculate Conception was solemnized at Lyon about 1128, perhaps at the instance of Saint Anselm of Canterbury, and Saint Bernard wrote to the canons of Lyon to complain that they should not have instituted a feast without consulting the pope. As soon as Thomas Becket, Archbishop of Canterbury, had been proclaimed blessed, 1173, his cult was instituted at Lyon. Lyon of the 12th century thus has a glorious place in the history of Catholic liturgy and even of dogma, but the 12th century was also marked by the heresy of Peter Waldo and the Waldenses, the poor men of Lyon, who were opposed by John of Canterbury, 1181-1193, and by an important change in the political situation of the archbishops. In 1157 Emperor Frederick Barbarossa confirmed the sovereignty of the archbishops of Lyon. Thenceforth there was a lively contest between them and the counts. An arbitration effected by the Pope in 1167 had no result, but by the Treaty of 1173, Guy, Count of Forez, ceded to the canons of the primatial Church of St. John his title of Count of Lyon and his temporal authority. Then came the growth of the Commune, more belated in Lyon than in many other cities, but in 1193 the archbishop had to make some concession to the citizens. The 13th century was a period of conflict. 3 times, in 1207, 1269, and 1290, grave troubles broke out between the partisans of the archbishop who dwelt in the chateau of Pierrecies, those of the count canons who lived in a separate quarter near the cathedral, and partisans of the townsfolk. Gregory X attempted without success to restore peace by 2 acts, April 2, 1273 and November 11, 1274. The kings of France were always inclined to side with the Commune. After the siege of Lyon by Louis X, 1310, the Treaty of April 10, 1312 definitively attached Lyon to the Kingdom of France, but until the beginning of the 15th century the Church of Lyon was allowed to coin its own money. If the 13th century had imperiled the political sovereignty of the archbishops, it had on the other hand made Lyon a kind of second Rome. Gregory X was a former canon of Lyon, while Innocent V, as Peter of Tarentaise, was Archbishop of Lyon from 1272 to 1273. Innocent IV and Gregory X sought refuge at Lyon from the Hohenstaufen, and held their 2 general councils of Lyon. Local tradition relates that it was on seeing the red hat of the canons of Lyon that the courtiers of Innocent IV conceived the idea of obtaining from the Council of Lyon its decree that the cardinals should henceforth wear red hats. The sojourn of Innocent IV at Lyon was marked by numerous works of public utility, to which the Pope gave vigorous encouragement. He granted indulgences to the faithful who should assist in the construction of the bridge over the Rhone, replacing that destroyed about 1190 by the passage of the troops of Richard Coeur de Lion on their way to the Crusade. The building of the churches of St. John and St. Justus was pushed forward with activity. He sent delegates even to England to solicit alms for this purpose, and he consecrated the high altar in both churches. At Lyon were crowned Clement V, 1305, and Pope John XXII, 1310. At Lyon in 1449 the antipope Felix V renounced the tiara. There, too, was held in 1512, without any definite conclusion, the last session of the schismatical Council of Pisa against Julius II. In 1560 the Calvinists took Lyon by surprise, but they were driven out by Antoine d'Albon, abbot of Savigny and later Archbishop of Lyon. Again masters of Lyon in 1562, they were driven thence by the Marechal de Vieuville. At the command of the famous Baron de Adrets they committed numerous acts of violence in the region of Montbrison. It was at Lyon that Henry IV of France, the converted Calvinist king, married Marie de Medici, December 9, 1600. Gerson, whose old age was spent at Lyon in the Abbey of St. Paul, where he instructed pure children, died there in 1429. Saint Francis de Sales died at Lyon on December 28, 1622. The Cure Colombat de Saint Embrun was celebrated at Saint Etienne in the 17th century for the generosity with which he founded the Hôtel Dieu, the charity hospital, and free schools, and also fed the workmen during the famine of 1693. M. Guigues has catalogued the 11 Hermitages, 8 of them for men and 3 for women, which were distinctive of the ascetical life of Christian Lyon in the Middle Ages. These were cells in which persons shut themselves up for life after 4 years of trial. The system of hermitages along the lines described by Grimelius and Albernus in the 9th century flourished especially from the 11th to the 13th century, and disappeared completely in the 16th. These hermitages were the private property of a neighboring church or monastery, which installed therein for life a male or female recluse. The General Almshouse of Lyon, or Charity Hospital, was founded in 1532 after the Great Famine of 1531, under the supervision of 8 administrators chosen from among the more important citizens. The institution of the Jubilee of St. Nizier dates beyond a doubt to the stay of Innocent IV at Lyon. This Jubilee, which had all the privileges of the secular Jubilees of Rome, was celebrated each time that Low Thursday, the feast of St. Nizier, coincided with April 2nd, i.e. whenever the feast of Easter itself was on the earliest date allowed by the Paschal cycle, namely March 22nd. In 1818, when this coincidence occurred, the feast of St. Nizier was not celebrated. But the Cathedral of St. John also enjoys a great jubilee each time that the feast of St. John the Baptist coincides with Corpus Christi, that is, whenever the feast of Corpus Christi falls on June 24th. It is certain that in 1451 the coincidence of these two feasts was celebrated with special splendor by the population of Lyon, then emerging from the troubles of the 100 Years' War, but there is no document to prove that the Jubilee indulgence existed at that date. However, Lyonese tradition places the first great Jubilee in 1451. Subsequent Jubilees took place in 1546, 1666, 1734, and 1886. Among the churches of France, wrote Saint Bernard to the canons of Lyon, that of Lyon has hitherto had ascendancy over all the others, as much for the dignity of its see as for its praiseworthy institutions. It is especially in the divine office that this judicious church has never readily acquiesced in unexpected and sudden novelties, and has never submitted to be tarnished by innovations which are becoming only to youth. In the 18th century, Archbishop Antoine de Montesette, contrary to the bull of Pius V on the breviary, changed the text of the breviary and the missal, from which there resulted a century of conflict for the Church of Lyon. The efforts of Pope Pius IX and Cardinal Bunel to suppress the innovations of Montesette provoked resistance on the part of the canons, who feared an attempt against the traditional Lyonese ceremonies. This culminated in 1861 in a protest on the part of the clergy and the laity, as much with regard to the civil power as to the Vatican. Finally, on February 4, 1864, at a reception of the parish priests of Lyon, Pius IX declared his displeasure at this agitation and assured them that nothing should be changed in the ancient Lyonese ceremonies. By a brief of March 17, 1864, he ordered the progressive introduction of the Roman breviary and missal in the diocese. The Primatial Church of Lyon adopted them for public services on December 8, 1869. One of the rites of the ancient Gallican liturgy, retained by the Church of Lyon, is the blessing of the people by the bishop at the moment of communion. The Concordat of 1801 assigned as the boundaries of the Archdiocese of Lyon the departments of the Rhône and Loire and the Ain, and as suffragans the dioceses of Mende, Grenoble, and Chambéry. The Archdiocese of Lyon was authorized by letters apostolic of November 29, 1801, to unite with his title the titles of the suppressed metropolitan sees of Vienne and Embrun. Thus the dioceses of Belley and Macon were suppressed on November 29, 1801, with all of Belley's and some of Macon's territory added to the archdiocese. The Diocese of Belley was restored on October 6, 1822, while the archdiocese's name changed to Lyon-Vienne, with the title of Embrun passing to the Archbishop of Aix, from whence, 2008, to the Bishop of Gap. A new Diocese of Saint Etienne was erected on December 26, 1970, from the Archdiocese's territory. The Archdiocese's name returned to Lyon on December 15, 2006, with the title of Vienne passing to its suffragan Grenoble. The Diocese of Lyon honors as saints Saint Epipodius and his companion Saint Alexander, probably martyrs under Marcus Aurelius, the priest Saint Peregrinus, 3rd century, Saint Baldanar, Gamier, a native of Avesius, at first a locksmith, whose piety was remarked by the bishop, Saint Viventilus. He became a cleric at the Abbey of Saint Justus, then subdeacon, and died about 760. The thermal resort of Aquae Segesti, in whose church Viventilus met him, has taken the name of Saint Gamier. Saint Viator, d. about 390, who followed the bishop Saint Justus to the Thebaid. Saints Romanus and Lupicinus, 5th century, natives of the Diocese of Lyon, who lived as solitaries within the present territory of the Diocese of Saint Claude. Saint Consortia, d. about 578, who, according to a legend criticized by Tillemont, was a daughter of Saint Eucherius, Saint Rambert, soldier and martyr in the 7th century, patron of the town of the same name. Blessed Jean-Pierre Nadel, b. in 1832 at Ste. Catherine sur Riviere, martyred at Caichou in 1862. Incomplete Saint Pothinus, 177. Saint Irenaeus. Incomplete 1077-1082 Saint Jedwin. 1081 to 1106 Hugh of Dye. 1128 to 1129 Renaud of Seymour. 1131 to 1139 Peterite. FL 1180 Guichard of Pontigny. 1193 to 1226 Renaud de Forez. 1289 Berard de Got. 1290 to 1295 Louis of Naples. 1301 to 1308 Louis de Villers. 1308 to 1332 Peter of Savoy. 1340 to 1342 Guy III d'Auvergne, Cardinal de Boulogne, papal diplomat. 1342 to 1354 Henry II de Villers. 1356 to 1358 Raymond Sacat. 1358 to 1365 Guillaume II de Thury. 1365 to 1375 Charles d'Alençon. 1375 to 1389 Jean II de Talleyrand. 1389 to 1415 Philippe III de Thury. 1415 to 1444 Amédée II de Talleyrand. 1444 to 1446 Geoffrey II de Versailles. 1447 to 1488 Charles II of Bourbon. 1488 to 1499 Hughes II de Talleyrand. 1499 to 1500 André d'Espinay, Cardinal. 1501 to 1536 François II de Rohan. 1537 to 1539 John, Cardinal of Lorraine. 1539 to 1551 Ippolito II d'Este, whom King Francis I of France named Cardinal Protector of the Crown of France at the court of Pope Paul III, and a patron of scholars. 1551 to 1562 Cardinal François de Tournon, who negotiated several times between Francis I and Emperor Charles V, combated the Reformation and founded the Collège de Tournon, which the Jesuits later made one of the most celebrated educational establishments of the kingdom. 1562 to 1564 Ippolito II d'Este, whom King Francis I of France named Cardinal Protector of the Crown of France at the court of Pope Paul III, and a patron of scholars. 1564 to 1573 Antoine d'Albon, editor of Rufinus and Ausonius. 1573 to 1599 Pierre d'Epinac, active auxiliary of the League. 1612 to 1626 Denis Simon de Marquement. 1628 to 1653 Alphonse Louis Duplessis de Richelieu, September 1628 to March 23, 1653. 1653 to 1693 Camille de Neufville de Villeroy. 1714 to 1731 François Paul de Neufville de Villeroy, August 15, 1714 to February 6, 1731. 1732 to 1739 Charles François de Châteauneuf de Rochemont. 1740 to 1758 Pierre Guérin de Tenson, November 11, 1740 to March 2, 1758. 1758 to 1788 Antoine de Malvin de Montesette, March 16, 1758 to May 2, 1788, of Jansenist tendencies, and who had published for his seminary by the Oratory in Joseph Valla 6 volumes of Institutions Theologicae known as Theology de Lyon, and spread throughout Italy by Scipio Ricci until condemned by the Index in 1792. 1788 to 1799 Yves Alexander de Marbeuf, May 12, 1788 to April 15, 1799. 1791 to 1794 Antoine Adrien Lamourette, 1742 to 1794, Constitutional Bishop of Lyon from March 27, 1791 to January 11, 1794, the date of his death on the scaffold. Cardinal Joseph Fesch, July 29, 1802 to May 13, 1839, Archbishop of Lyon, Vienne, Embrun, until 1822. Cardinal Joachim Jean d'Isord, June 13, 1839 to October 7, 1839. Cardinal Louis Jacques Maurice de Bonald, December 4, 1839 to February 25, 1870. Jacques-Marie Genouliac, March 2, 1870 to November 17, 1875, known for his Histoire du dogme catholique pendant les trois premiers siècles. Cardinal Louis-Marie Cavrat, April 20, 1876 to January 23, 1887. Cardinal Joseph Alfred Foulon, March 23, 1887 to January 23, 1893. Cardinal Pierre Hector Cooley, June 14, 1893 to September 11, 1912. Cardinal Hector Seven, December 2, 1912 to May 4, 1916. Cardinal Louis Joseph Morin, December 1, 1916 to November 16, 1936. Cardinal Pierre-Marie Gerlier, July 30, 1937 to January 17, 1965. Cardinal Jean-Marie Villot, January 17, 1965, April 7, 1967. Cardinal Alexander Ringard, May 28, 1967 to October 29, 1981. Cardinal Albert de Courtrai, October 29, 1981 to September 16, 1994. Cardinal Jean-Marie Boulin, May 27, 1995 to March 1, 1998. Cardinal Louis-Marie Billy, July 10, 1998 to March 12, 2002. Cardinal Philippe Barbarin, July 16, 2002 to March 6, 2020. Gams Pius Bonifacius, 1873. Series Episcoporum Ecclesiae Catholici, quodquadenoturae Beato Petro Apostolo. Ratisbon, Types et Sumptibus Georgii Josephi Mans. Use with caution, obsolete. Eubel, Conradus, ed. 1913, Hierarchia Catholica, Thomas I, 2nd ed. Munster, Libraria Regensburgiana.cs1 made, extra text, authors list, link, in Latin. Eubel, Conradus, ed. 1914, Hierarchia Catholica, Thomas II, 2nd ed. Munster, Libraria Regensburgiana.cs1 made, extra text, authors list, link, in Latin. Eubel, Conradus, ed. Gulick, Guilelmus, 1923. Hierarchia Catholica, Thomas III, 2nd ed. Munster, Libraria Regensburgiana.cs1 made, extra text, authors list, link. Gauchat, Patricius, Patrice, 1935. Hierarchia Catholica 4, 1592 to 1667. Munster, Libraria Regensburgiana. Retrieved July 6, 2016. Ritzler, Remigius, Sephrin, Permanus, 1952. Hierarchia Catholica Mediae et Recentis Evivi, 1667 to 1730. Pataviae, Messaggero DS Antonio. Retrieved July 6, 2016. Ritzler, Remigius, Sephrin, Permanus, 1958. Hierarchia Catholica Mediae et Recentis Evi 6, 1730 to 1799. Pataviae, Messaggero DS Antonio. Retrieved July 6, 2016. Ritzler, Remigius, Sephrin, Permanus, 1968. Hierarchia Catholica Mediae et Recentioris Evi Civ Summarum Pontificum, SRE Cardinalium, Ecclesiarum Antistitum Series. A Pontificata Pi pages 7, 1800, Usque et Pontificatum Gregorii pages 16, 1846, in Latin. Volume 7. Monasterii, Lib. Regensburgiana. Remigius Ritzler, Permanus Sephrin, 1978. Hierarchia Catholica Mediae et Recentioris Evi. A Pontificata Pii pages 9, 1846, Usque et Pontificatum Leonis pages 13, 1903, in Latin. Volume 8. Il Sagro Dies Antonio. Piedad, Zenon, 2002. Hierarchia Catholica Mediae tu Recentioris Evi. A Pontificata Pi Pages X, 1903, Usque ad Pontificatum Benedicti pages 15, 1922, in Latin. Volume 9. Padua, Messaggero di San Antonio. ISBN 978-88-250-1000-8. Société Bibliographique, France, 1907. L'Episcopat Français depuis la Concorde jusqu'à la séparation, 1802-1905. Paris, Library de Saints-Pérez. Pages 346-350. Fiscat, Honoré, 1864. La France Pontificale, Gallia Christiana Métropole de Lyon et Vienne, Lyon, in French. Paris, Etienne Repos.